Okay. Hold on a second. An error occurred. Wait a moment. Try it again. All right,
Okay,
let's try it
not a
again. Here
problem.
we go. Oh, now it's on. Okay. Oh, okay, folks. Sorry about the awkward beginning. Thank you and welcome to the Double 18 podcast live stream edition. I'm your host, Stephen Nagishi. We were just notified that we had an error going live and we had to go on. But before we did that, it looked like the internet kind of acted funny and then finally got connected. So we apologize for the very, very awkward opening scene there. To my right on the screen is my good friend and co-host and the associate editor of sports blog Awful Announcing, who has his own Substack now. It is none other than Ken Fang. And Ken, happy Monday to you. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. And let's not waste any time. Obviously, the story from last week, basically, is the contrast in style between the NHL and the NBA. Normally, they had you know, they don't clash in terms of their all-star games normally, but this year, for some reason, they had a clash on the same timeline, and the NHL Four Nations face-off, which obviously is taking place right now with the U.S. and Sweden about to get on a little bit later tonight, has been a massive success. Four Nations, U.S., Canada, Finland, and Sweden. Most noticeably, the Russia is not in this tournament, obviously for obvious reasons, of course. But Ken, give me your thoughts on the Four Nation face-off success and the whether this is something that the NHL can build and move on from their traditional All-Star game forever.
Oh, I have to say, Stephen, it's been a huge success. I mean, the very first game between Canada and Sweden, I think it was last Wednesday night, was absolutely a great game. I mean, as soon as I mean, Canada came out flying, they were leading
Mhm.
3-0, but then
Right.
Sweden scored 3 goals in the third period and then tied it up, and they went to a great overtime that was filled with intensity. I mean, one of the big criticisms about the NBA All-Star game over the last few years is that the NBA All-Star game is a joke, that they don't play, they don't care, there's no defense. I mean, once you put the uniform of your nation, it just seems like, especially for hockey players, Stephen, whether it was Sidney Crosby who went into this tournament with NHLers 28-0 in major tournaments. And and he just played like he was unbelievable out there. Connor McDavid of the Edmonton Oilers was flying all over the ice. Also, you had Cole McCarr of the Colorado Avalanche playing just extremely well. So you had these players who are normally rivals in the NHL playing on the same lines, and all of a sudden they're just. It was just like, as if they were transformed. This is an Olympic type tournament now. Of course, there's only, as we mentioned, 4 teams, 4 nations. You can't have any more than that because this is such a short break. It was basically they're playing 7 games in a span of 10 days, Stephen. But it was just fantastic to watch. And then, of course, the United States and Canada, which is on Saturday night, which is again in Montreal. They started the first 4 games in Montreal. First 3 days in Montreal, and now they're having this one in Boston, and they're going to finish up with the final between the United States and Canada on Thursday, also in Boston, which is near me. I was just flabbergasted to see right in the first 9 seconds between USA and Canada, 3 fights between the Kachuk brothers, and it was just really, really fun to watch. And once they got settled into it, it was great hockey. Of course, the United States won that game 3-1. I expect a much different effort from Canada. They played much better today, beating up on Finland, although they were up 4-1 on Finland, and then Finland made it a little bit interesting, scoring 2 goals late in the third period before Sidney Crosby scored an empty net goal. But fantastic! It's just fun to watch, Stephen. I mean,
It was.
you could argue that maybe. You could bring in other nations. I don't think we're going to see Russia as long as the International Olympic Committee and the government of sport decide to ban it from international competition, and they deservedly so because of their doping situations, and also with the situation in Ukraine as well. Um, but I think that right now you could rotate other nations in there other than Sweden and Finland. Fun to watch, just great hockey, great hockey to watch. And Stephen, this has just been a lot of fun, and I don't think the NHL really expected it to take off as well as it did. But when you have United States, Canada, and also the Europeans, the rivalry between Sweden and Finland, and that was a great game too on Saturday. That was an overtime game, so a lot of fun and great to watch. And I have to say that the NHL has taken over the NBA at least for this week.
Yeah, I think a part of the attention and the strong rating has a lot to do with the political climate, unfortunately, that we live in today. There's no question about that. And the fight that happened 3 seconds into the game, and then subsequently 3 more fights, just added more intensity to the game. The booing of the national anthem, U.S. national anthem, etc. Certainly, again, that's been a hot button topic. I'm sure that was not necessarily what was on the minds of the players on both countries. I like to think that wasn't even brought up, and I am sure that the Canadian players didn't try to instigate, or maybe behind closed doors, at least since a lot of them obviously play with each other or on the same team.
Well,
they weren't texting, trash talking. They weren't tweeting, or they weren't sending text messages back and forth about.
Well, actually, I'll tell you what.
Stuff, so
the fight actually began in a group chat. They said, "Let's go. We're going to go." And then that's the Kachuk brothers said that's how it started. The group chat in the beginning of the morning of the game on Saturday. They said, and then they went into the line and said, "Hey, let's go." And so that's what happened with Brady Kachuk and his brother. It was just fun to watch. I know a lot of people don't necessarily like hockey for the fights, but just goes to show how intense the rivalry was, and it was just really fantastic. And it was fun to watch, and at least for a guy like me who loves old time hockey, it was just great to see, and it just goes to show how intense the rivalry is. And of course, you could put the geopolitical nonsense aside of what's going on with the 47th president of the United States. We'll try to ignore that, but I will say that. There was booing of the national anthem in Montreal, but Montreal always boos the national anthem, especially when they play Boston. The United States national anthem, it's a tradition over there. It's kind of like when Chicago cheers the national anthem for the Blackhawks game, Stephen. It's something that's a tradition in Montreal, is to boo the United States national anthem, whoever is playing Montreal. So it's kind of funny how that happened. But of course, the little bit extra intensity of what's been going on since 47 was inaugurated. But certainly, just to see the United States and Canada play that great rivalry, and they'll play it again on Thursday, it's going to be fun to watch.
Absolutely. We'll find out if this has any staying power. Much like the with the NHL, they have the Winter Classic. Those things, tend to have its luster, and then as get over, in overtime, I should say, excuse me, they start to lose its interest, and the shine wars off. Unfortunately, that's been the case with the I think Winter Classics. Although this year it certainly did not help that you have two marginal teams, Chicago and St. Louis, far from their Stanley Cup winning days, especially Chicago, playing in the Winter Classics, and the ratings weren't that good, and the game, the final score, reflected. But we'll see. It's only 4 nations. I don't think hockey, unfortunately, again, you have no Russia, and there's no other countries that outside of Russia has that can be added and make it into a more of a round robin tournament or things like that. So, let's see how long this format is going to last. Maybe they might do it every other year, just to make it fresh. We'll see. NHL
Well,
certainly,
well,
compared
they
to the
can't do it
NBA
next year
and the
because they
sport.
got the Olympics. They got the Olympics
Oh, okay,
next year, and
okay.
the
Okay,
NHL
well, they
players
got the
are playing in
Olympics, so
that. So
they
they're
got the bigger version of
yeah,
the nations facing off each
they'll be
other.
in yeah,
So maybe the year after, maybe they can build upon that. But again,
absolutely. Hmm.
um, the hockey fans, I'm not saying they're fickle, but these things are, again, if it's done redundantly, it loses its interest, unfortunately. But this is, again, the world we live in, where people have a short lifespan and attention span, etc. So let's see if NHL can harness this into a excuse me, as a legitimate replacement for their own version of All-Star Game, or this is something that they might have to kind of incorporate the nation face-off into the actual NHL game, where maybe the U.S. Canada versus the rest of the world, something like that. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think that we'll see something like this. I think this has been such a big success. The NHL All Star Game. Um, I think you'll see something like the USA or Canada, North America versus the world. I think eventually they've tried it
Right.
before,
Mhm.
and with limited success. But I think something like this, Stephen, 4 nations face off. USA and Canada can definitely stay in, but of course, they have Czechia, which has a hockey nation that's quite good. They could do, Norway also has a great hockey tradition as well. So, they can draw from other European nations as well. I don't think China or Japan definitely aren't hockey powers as of yet, but
No,
I can see
no, I don't.
definitely,
I don't
yeah,
think they will be,
yeah,
unfortunately. But
no, of course, yeah,
so
but I can
basically,
definitely I can see like something like Czechia or maybe like I said, Norway could be, or there could be replacements for Sweden and Finland down the line, or maybe I don't think
Czech
Switzerland's going to.
Republic, Slovakia, those are
Yeah,
the
yeah,
traditional powerhouses. Also,
hmm,
that's been there. You might see Germany. They have
hmm,
produced some players in the past,
yeah,
but we'll see if their numbers are there. But you might have, again, like I said, U.S. Canada, like a North America team versus the Euro, all Euro team, something like that. So
yeah,
this could be
hmm,
something that NHL might incorporate to spice things up, because certainly 4 nations alone is going to lose its interest, because it's always going to be the same countries every year if you're going to do it. So
hmm,
maybe that's something that maybe NHL can find a new formula to make it interesting. So again, this 4 nation face off is a success, but you know whether it's something that they can build upon, or this is something that they can do it every year, with the exception of next year being Olympics, remains to be seen, in my opinion, Ken.
yeah. I mean, next year, of course, as you mentioned, 2026 in Milan Cortina,
It's
we'll see
Olympics,
the
yes.
yeah, we'll have the full. Hockey tournament, which will be run by the IHF next season in the Olympics. So it'll be fun to see that as well. We always like watching the Olympics, especially.
Yeah.
I don't think Russia is going to be having another team. At least at this point, it's too late for them to be in the Olympics. I think they've been banned again. But so far, I think you're going to see that'll be fun to watch between the United States and Canada. This, and of course, this Four Nations face-off has been a nice appetizer for that for next season. The NHL players will be back. The last time they were in there, I think, was 2014. That was ironically in Russia. So they did, the NHL did not send players in 2018 nor in 2022 when the Olympics were in communist China. So it's nice to see the Olympic players back. They got this. They got this negotiated in the in the collective bargaining agreement that's currently the current CBA. So it's nice to see the NHL players back, especially in 2026. And this Four Nations face-off has been a very nice appetizer for that. And we'll see what happens next season. But it'll be fun to watch. And of course, the NHL will be off. Like they did for this Four Nations face-off. They basically took their all-star break and had it for this Four Nations face-off. They'll be taking 3 weeks off in February next season, Stephen, and that'll be fun to watch.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to the other all-star game, but this one was I don't know how to put it into words, Ken, but not exactly receiving a
It was an abomination.
It was an abomination, from the start to finish. This NBA All-Star game was again, you said it best, abomination. It was a slap in the face, an insult to the intelligence, of all the NBA fans, whatever you want to say. It was not good, which kind of coincided with the SNL 50, which we will try to touch on it maybe toward the end of our broadcast. And, I found myself watching that a little bit more than what I was treated to. And listen, I totally understand, that Adam Silver, the NHL commissioner, was trying to do, along with the help of Steph Curry, because obviously the game was in the Bay Area. And it was understandable that Steph and Adam Silver was trying to boost the NBA All-Star in its prestige and its credibility. But unfortunately, what we witnessed yesterday with the 4-team tournament, it just didn't seem to click at all, Ken.
Yeah, it was just one of those situations, Stephen, where, like you, I watched the same thing. I watched the SNL 50th anniversary, which, by the way, averaged 14.8 million viewers, which is NBC's largest entertainment telecast in 5 years. So it just goes to show that network TV still can get a big audience when it has something like this, like a big event. Well, as far as this one, this was on TNT. Next year is going to be on NBC, so I think you're going to see a much more different format. They'll get better ratings, definitely, because the game will be on NBC and Peacock, which will be a bigger audience than what TNT got. We don't have numbers on TNT yet, but I just saw on social media how this was just totally panned, Stephen, this format. Granted, they wanted to get more life into the game, and totally understand that. They had the rising stars from the NBA G League in there as well. And, granted, you want to get some more exposure for the G League too, but I just think that this is just one of those situations, Stephen, that the NBA All-Star game has been so maligned. And last year we saw over 200 points scored for the winning team, which is just absolutely ridiculous. No defense is played. No one wants to get hurt. It just was ridiculous. People were just basically running from back and forth to the court and just doing uncontested lay-ins last year. It was just really sad to watch. So I don't think anybody, until we get something like a USA versus the world type of situation, something similar like that, when you can have the Joker from Denver, and you can have Wembanyama from France, European players and Asian players as well that are in the NBA. Any Asian players that are in the NBA. I think that's what has to happen. I think that when you get a USA versus the world, I think you get a better product, and probably a better playing situation. But until you get that, Steven, I don't think any format is going to work with the NBA All-Star game until we get a USA versus the world type of situation.
Yeah, that's true. The NBA All-Star Weekend summary pretty much summed it up. They had more commercials than the actual game itself.
Right.
Kevin Hart injected himself as one of the MC? What is the guy who was calling the game? He wasn't one of the team coaches, right?
No, it was the TNT guys.
Okay,
It
yeah,
was
yeah.
yeah, it was the TNT guys, and Candace Parker was part of it as well, which is fine. And Shaq was part of it. Excuse me. Uh, excuse me. You had Shaq and you had Kenny Smith, and Charles Barkley. All of them were involved in the broadcast, and of course TNT's last year before they give way to NBC takes it over every year for the next 11 seasons. But I have to say that I think NBC is going to try and check some life. NBC had some good ratings for the NBA All-Star game, but that was when the players actually played in it. They actually had some
And not only
intensity in
play,
there.
but they gave a damn about it too.
Yeah, exactly. You had Larry Bird playing in it. Magic Johnson, of course, when he had AIDS, came back in the All-Star game. It was an emotional moment. Um, I think now, I don't think with anything the United States, by the way, has just scored within the
Yep,
first
I'm watching it too.
35 seconds against Sweden. So any worries that the United States may just take this game off because they have already advanced to the finals game against Canada. That definitely is. I think it was it Mark Kreider who scored the game? Yeah, I think scored that goal. I think it was Kreider. I think I'm just looking at it
Mark Ryder.
right now.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Was it Rich? I can't see it right now,
Yeah,
but I
Kreider.
have
Yeah,
the.
Kreider.
Yeah, it was Kreider. Okay,
Yeah, it was
so
Kreider.
yeah, it was Kreider. So we'll see. It was a good goal there, and the United States leads, like I said, 1-0 over there. We'll see if they decide to beat up on Sweden, or Sweden. They're already eliminated from the tournament. They're not going to be going to the finals. United States and Canada, that they'll be playing in the they'll be playing on Thursday. Anyway, in regards to the NBA format, I think NBC is going to have to do something and trying to get and try to refresh this thing. I don't know exactly what they'll do, but I think the USA versus the world. I think that's what they have to do, Stephen, because this whole thing needs refreshing. And even the NBA All Star Skills Contest on Saturday. There was no life in it as well. I think people were hoping that Caitlin Clark was going to be in the 3-point shooting contest. Sounded like what happened last year with Sabrina Ionescu was in the 3-point shooting contest. People were hoping to see Caitlin Clark. That didn't happen. So I don't know. The whole NBA All Star Weekend really needs a reboot, Stephen.
Yeah, Adam Silver. I give him credit for trying to, you know, do different things. At least I'll give him credit for that. But
Right.
this probably wasn't it. And I think there are a lot of grumblings from other people that with the quality of the game, the ratings are down. Of course, that's been a issue. There were even talks about maybe making the NBA instead of a 12-minute, quarter, they might shorten it to 10-minute or something like that. But unfortunately, it really still doesn't change the fact that the basketball overall quality of it just isn't good right now. It's just basically a lot of players launching threes to no avail. It's just it's terrifying to watch. Okay, maybe terrifying is a strong of a word, but when you got guys like Draymond Green going on TNT, prepping up for his own future NBA, media career, and then trashing the basketball or the All-Star game, and then you have legend Oscar Robertson ripping, Draymond, saying that what does he do other than passing the ball to Steph Curry? What does he do? You got the generational gap, old school against new school. It's tough. The NBA is trying to obviously incorporate the playing game, kind of like the similar to FA Cup in English Premier League, but they might have to kind of switch it up. Play the I don't know, play the what is that, the NBA Cup game in the
Hmm.
All-Star
Right.
game. Basically, that might be more of an entertainment rather than having players who have no desire or who don't even care about it. You might have a Final Four in the Saturday, um, or Friday night, and then
Hmm.
Sunday would be the championship, something like that. And the Saturday we could still have probably the dunk contest and the regular 3-point shooting and all the individual stuffs there too. That's understandable. I think there are certainly things that can be done. I know there were some people, you mentioned the North America versus the world, something like that, and it can't be played overseas. I don't know if any player wants to even leave the country and go play, a basketball game overseas when it's their, time off. Although load management nowadays has made it so easy for these guys to take time off and relax a little bit. And I will also say about LeBron, who was there and then suddenly a few hours before the All-Star game decided not to play, which obviously kind of makes him look like a total hypocrite. But Ken, what do you think? The LeBron not taking the game himself very seriously. He's never going to participate in the dunk contest. The load management, and then
Hmm.
the team that he forced his way into forming a team in Miami with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, et cetera, the super team, super max contracts, etc. As great of a player he has been, there's no question about that. I saw somebody who said that he's done more harm for the game than good. Do you buy into that?
I don't buy that. I really don't. The only was that Skip Bayless who said that. I mean, come on.
No, no, no. It was somebody else who posted it. Some random
Yeah,
dude that just popped up
I
on my
don't.
timeline for something. So,
Yeah, I don't buy that. It's LeBron James has done a lot to help the game. Is he trying to force Bronny James on us? Sure, yeah, I that's probably true, but I don't think LeBron James has done anything to harm the game. And yeah, he became a heel when he went to the Miami Heat, but then he came back to Cleveland and then brought them a championship. So I think that's a wash. I don't think that LeBron James has done any. I mean, I don't think anybody cares whether he was in the All-Star game or not. No one really watched it anyway, Steven. So whether he decides to play or not do the dunk, do the dunk, slam dunk competition, and he's never been in it. So I don't think that anyone's missed him, to be honest with you. So if he decides to play in the All-Star game or not, I mean, the man's in his 40s now. If he doesn't want to play in it, and because of load management or he's injured, then let him do it. I think he's deserved the fact he's called a shot. I mean, the guy's he's one of the greatest players in the game. Has he won 6 championships like Michael Jordan? No, but he's won his share of championships, and he's a sure first ballot Hall of Famer, Steven. So I don't buy that the fact that he's harmed the game. I don't buy that at all.
but nonetheless, the All-Star game is kind of like an encapsulation of where the NBA is NBA right now, that they find themselves in, and your boss Ben Koo posted something about both the NBA and the NHL, kind of like in the rights, entering a period of rights vulnerability. I'm going to share that screen for you, which I'm sure you may have seen it, which is a a newsletter that you guys over there at the Alpha are announcing is, obviously producing for those who subscribe to it. Do you feel like the kind of the way that the NHL and the NBA, the regular season losing its luster, the All-Star game fiasco, and everything? Do you feel like the golden age where we understand with even with the the streaming services here and there, and they're always going to be looking for content, and the consumers like you and I are forced to pay a lot. moving forward. But do you feel like the NBA and the NHL are kind of like being a little more vulnerable in this country because of the massive popularity of the NFL?
Well, the NBA, um, it falls victim to the right saying it's woke and everything, which is just ridiculous. But I think the NBA ratings have stabilized. The people were talking about the NBA's ratings earlier this season being an absolute disaster, but
Right.
they've stabilized now. Now that they've had the NBA, the NFL away from them, and now is the NFL. Of course, we talked about the NFL going after the NBA on Christmas Day. That's still going to. That's no matter what. That's going to be an issue. I think the NFL is here to stay on Christmas Day. But I'll be honest with you, Steven. I think the NHL and the NBA are always going to be give content for regional sports networks as long as they find a way to exist. Um, uh, we saw that Portland, now that they got away from root sports, their ratings are absolutely great. Now that the fact that they're back on free television, over the air television.
Right.
Um, and I think that's going to be something that the NBA is in a good position to do because they're starting to do that more often. I noticed that when I do the viewing picks for awful announcing, they find a way to be doing more of their games on over the air television. The NHL still hasn't found a way to do that. There's still a lot of their games are either on regional sports networks, whether it's FanDuel, the Detroit, or NBC Sports Philadelphia, or NESN like in Boston. They still
Yeah.
have to figure that out. Major League Baseball also as well, because I think they have to figure a way to get back and do a hybrid of what the NBA is doing, getting back on free television. So I think that the National Football, yeah, sure. The regular season is vulnerable. Yeah, sure. But they still give content to the networks like ESPN and TNT. TNT is going to need them, especially because they're going to lose the NBA next season. Um, the NBA, I think, is going to have to, I think the NBA is in a much better position in regards to that, Stephen. So, I haven't read the articles that Ben wrote. I have to look more into that, but I think he's right that definitely especially Major League Baseball, if they lose, a lot of their money comes from regional sports networks, and if they lose out on that, and they can't find a way to get fans to subscribe to their games with a hybrid of over the air television and subscriptions to MLB. If they can't do that, then they're going to lose out on a lot of like small market teams. We may see contraction that we saw was threatened back in the early 1990s with Minnesota. So we'll see what happens. But I think that in regards to the regular season, I think the NBA is going to be fine. The NHL has got to find a way to uh, figure out its model, especially with the regional sports networks and Major League Baseball as well. But once they figure it out, I think they'll be okay.
Mhm. Well, let's see what happens next year. Again, this All-Star game was an abomination, and certainly a massive
Mhm.
letdown. And I think the purists certainly are really, really worried about the direction of the game. All-Star game fiasco notwithstanding. So, Adam Silver has his works cut out. I'm sure he'll take it to heart about what he hears it. I'm sure he's not going to sit back and just do nothing about it. I'm sure with the NBA, NBC's, massive contract that is already in place, something needs to happen. With the NBC, they already have the Winter Olympics, the NBA All-Star Game, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot riding on NBC for their investment as well. So they really, really need to, step it up and find the right formula. Otherwise, it's not just the All-Star Game that becomes completely irrelevant. The NBA as a whole could become irrelevant in the eyes of many people and their fans. This could be even a lot worse than the early '80s when the NBA finals were on midnight, and then pretty much half of the league, everybody had a drug problems or something like that. It could be just like that again if they're not really, really careful, because the players themselves just don't take it seriously. So, I'm very curious to see what they learn from this experience. What are they going to do about it to enhance the viewing experience and how to make it more appealing and successful to the masses or whoever they're trying to target, whether it's the teenagers or the hardcore fans. I just don't know if the NBA themselves are even quite sure who their target audience is. And I think kind of yesterday's, the street ball, plus the Mr. Beast and Kevin Hart and all that, jumble up. It just wasn't really working at all, Ken.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what they were trying to go for. They're trying to get that TikTok audience and the YouTube audience, and I get that. I understand it, but um, you and I know everybody wants to get younger and try to get the next best thing and hoping, but I think the NHL hit on something. I said just get the players to play,
Mm-hmm.
put on the uniform of your country. And I think it struck a chord. It struck a chord at the right time. I think the NBA. I think, like I said, USA versus the world. I think that's what you're gonna. That's what you're gonna have to do to get to bring some juice back into the All Star game. You can try, 3 teams, 4 teams, 3-team format, 4-team format, and get the winner in. But until you get a USA versus the world and get some buy-in from the players, you're still going to have this ridiculousness. So I think the NBC is definitely going to try something next season to try and shake this up. But I don't, I really don't I really don't know what it could be other than that to try and get some viewership back in. I mean, you remember what Fox did with the Major League All-Star game by giving the home field advantage to the winning league, whether it was the American and National League, and that was just a failure because no one accepted it. Although, my Boston Red Sox actually was the recipients of that, were the beneficiaries of that in 2004, back in and they got the home field advantage and were able to parlay into a World Series championship. But other than that, Stephen, I mean, doing gimmicks in the All-Star game just doesn't work. And I think we've seen it whether it's and they've also seen it with the Pro Bowl as well. The Pro Bowl has gone from an actual game into a skills competition, and no one really cares. So and the NFL's got to find a format for that too. So until we get something that actually interests the fans, I think the All-Star games, except for the Major League Baseball All-Star game, which also has had some difficult ratings, trying to get people to watch as well. I think it might be a little bit obsolete, to be honest with you.
That is well said, and I think it was a great way for you to put an end to this conversation. NHL and the NBA certainly, this All-Star and the way that their business was a sharp contrast. And I'm not saying that NBA and NHL is going to jump on over NBA because of this, but obviously with two leagues that are trying to compete for the share now that the NFL season is officially over, even with the NFL season happening, they overlap with each other, unfortunately, parts of the season. So, they're going to have to make sure that the league remains relevant as a whole, and, making sure that the All-Star game, in no matter what format it is, remains relevant, and thinking of the fans' interest first, certainly will go a long way there. All right, let's move on to baseball. Now that that the baseball season is upon us, a lot of teams are starting to enter the spring training. So, and it's an interesting time because obviously the Dodgers and the Cubs, because they play in Tokyo in middle of March, which obviously is about exactly almost a month from now. And I was actually looking at the interesting article, Ken. I'm going to try and pull out. My team, the Cubs, are obviously going to the Dodgers. Facing against the Dodgers in Tokyo. And obviously, we talked about the Dodgers cornering the Asian market, particularly in Japan, with the addition of Roki Sasaki under a bit of a lot of cloud of suspicion, even amongst the Japanese fans and media. This was actually something that caught my attention. Seiya Suzuki, their outfielder, now full-time DH, was actually a conversation, or at least a subject of a trade rumor, because he wanted to play right field, even though his defense hasn't been really all that great. But the funny thing was, last year, I think the Cubs fired Suzuki's translator for some reason. And obviously that played a huge role in the communication that that was actually non-existent between Suzuki and Counsell. And hopefully it has nothing to do with the fact that it is, the defense or something like that. But at least, manager Craig Counsell says here took the blame. Counsell had never managed a Japanese player before and was a bit complacent about and how he dealt with the Suzuki. Now, this was obviously in the role of right field or DH. We both talked about it kind of at the end of the year. I'll put it on myself just to doing a better job with talking to him. Sometimes the language barrier makes you lazy, unfortunately, and that's on me. And I got to get a little better at that and will. That's something that I promised Seiya, and then we'll work hard to do. Now, I guess in this case, Ken, we'll have to give, I guess, Counsell the benefit of the doubt. Certainly, I think the fact that he's never coached a Japanese player in his entire career, certainly coaching in a small market team like Milwaukee, where you're not going to get much attention from a Japanese player or market, no less. Seems like I guess it's a lazy excuse, which at least I give Counsell for admitting that he kind of fell into that role there. But I think this is what a lot of teams kind of find themselves, going up against the teams like the Dodgers. Okay, I get it, because it's the proximity to the West Coast to Japan versus Chicago or East Coast, like big markets like New York and Boston is a little more different. The weather is different. There's also the built-in community where you have Little Tokyo and the LA area, as well as a lot of Asian communities and shops, supermarkets that are already there versus places like Chicago and even to some degree New York. But whatever the issue is, I sometimes think that a lot of teams are just kind of like giving up when it comes to signing or going after Asian players, because they don't do a good job of selling themselves as well as offering support to the Asian players. That's why the Dodgers, I understand it's a built-in advantage with the amount of Asian players that have already played for them in the past, and now you have arguably the biggest star in Shohei Ohtani, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and now Roki Sasaki, and then the one other Korean player who's a very young star coming from KBO. The name I that is escaping me, from my apologies there. But at least the Cubs, if they're going to go out there in places like Tokyo and go up against the popular Dodgers, this is an opportunity for them to sell themselves. And if Counsell is saying that he's got to do a better job about it, he needs to hopefully be a good manager for not only for Suzuki but Shota Imanaga that they already have there, and hopefully for the future Asian players that are interested in coming over to the major leagues, in my opinion. What do you think about these openness from Counsell about him being a little bit complacent when it comes to these types of things?
Well, Stephen, I don't know much about this story. This is the first I've heard about it, so I really can't really comment about it. But I will say that you do want to see more openness, and you do want to be able to see that a manager at least find a way to communicate well with all of his players, whether it's Japanese or whether it doesn't speak English, or Hispanic players, or wherever they're coming from. One thing I gave the Boston Red Sox credit under Dan Duquette, and I really was a big critic of Duquette, was his drafting of Asian players and also the outreach that he had. He got a lot of players, whether it was Tomooka, whether it was Sonny Woo Kim. He also drafted Robinson Checo. He drafted a lot of Japanese players, and he made sure that they felt at home. And he had this outreach, and he had a very good connection with with Japan as well. Something he continued with the Baltimore Orioles. So I give, as much as I was not a Dan Duquette fan, I give him credit for what he did with his outreach to Asian players. Now, when he left, of course, that stopped. But I have to say, Stephen, that it's all about your management, and it's all about how you manage to treat those players and the outreach, and you're making your players feel comfortable. And I think that's one thing the Dodgers have done, and Seattle has done, especially when we saw West Coast teams that we've seen, but especially the Dodgers and the Mariners, with Ichiro in Seattle, making him feel comfortable and making him sure that he knew that there was a Japanese community for him to feel comfortable with. And now we're seeing that with the Dodgers, especially what they're doing with their Japanese players as well. So I'd like to see that more outreach by other teams, and and again, I'm not too familiar with this Cubs story, Steven, so I'm going to have to defer to you on it. But
Right.
again, for Craig Counsell to say exactly that he wasn't too familiar with it, and wasn't, saying it was the first time he had a Japanese player under his watch, and not knowing how to handle it. I think that is a good thing to be open with, but it's also at the same time, I fault. And again, I'm speaking. Maybe if I'm speaking out of turn, let me know. But I also fault Cubs management for not trying to make it more comfortable and trying to give more outreach to the Japanese players to make them feel more comfortable to be on the team. Because if you're not doing that, you're not going to get more Japanese players to sign with you. And something that the Red Sox were able to do with Dan Duquette because of this outreach and having a good infrastructure in place and interpreters there for their Japanese and Korean players to feel comfortable to be in the organization, and which is why they were so good at signing them in the late 90s and early 2000s, Stephen.
Yeah. So I think the Athletic article had a better description here. The Suzuki's agent is also happens to be Roki Sasaki's agent, Joe Wolf. I think the miscommunication or the strained relationship happened before during winter meetings. I remember this. Suzuki was a kind of a trade candidate because he became a subject of the Cubs approaching and wanting maybe perhaps waive his no trade clause because they ended up getting Kyle Tucker from the Astros to play right field. Tucker is a Gold Glove outfielder. So, and then Wolf said that his client also would not have likely to sign with a team that project him as a full-time DH during the posting process of leaving the MPB. So that's understandable. It was David Ross who actually was the manager the first, I think, 2 years of his career before Counsell was hired in the offseason and became a full-time manager in his first year with the Cubs last year. So it's understandable. The guy that you trusted is no longer managing the team, and you're now being a DH, which obviously I don't think it knocks your value down by any stretch of the imagination, because now both the American League and the National League are adopting a DH. So, as long as he can hit, he can go anywhere, and he will be able to succeed. So, whatever the issue was, and obviously the miscommunication between both sides did not factor into the firing of his translator late last year. So, again, I think a lot of teams sometimes take that for granted. I do believe that regardless of your team or where your market size is, you're your obligation. I know it might sound like a weird thing to say, but I think it's an obligation for a team to make sure that the player and their families are in a good position to feel comfortable and be successful.
Mhm.
Because you don't, if you're a baseball player with a child and a wife living basically, you know, 81 times on the road, and you don't get barely get to see them, come home, and then also have to deal with the language barriers. Those things are going to be a massive problem. That's something that a lot of teams, if you want to get Asian players, Japanese, Taiwanese, or South Korean, you really need to take that into consideration and do a good job of selling yourself. Again,
Yeah.
I'm glad Council said that it was lazy on his part, and then going to do a better job. I'm not expecting him to suddenly speak Japanese, but at least I hope that he will do a better job of communicating. And it takes a lot of guts for somebody like him to openly admit something like this. You make $8 million, you're the highest paid manager. These things sometimes it makes you kind of defensive, because you're like, hey, I make $8 million for being one of the best managers. I don't give a what. Sometimes those are sometimes the dismissive attitude that a lot of coaches in every sport sometimes tend to display. So I'm glad that Council is doing that, and hopefully Suzuki will feel at home, and they need a bat of a Suzuki to have a real big season for the Cubs to even sniff a playoff. So hopefully it will be something that to keep an eye out on when the Dodgers and the Cubs both go to Tokyo in about a month from now. Anything else that stood out to you over the weekend, Ken?
Well, I have to say it was the Four Nations face-off, Stephen. I think that was a big success, and I think I'm going to have to say that I think USA and Canada on Thursday night on ESPN is going to get a huge audience. I think it's going to be one of the bigger audiences that we're going to see. I think the fact that the United States winning the first game on Saturday, 3-1, is going to bring a lot of interest in, and people are going to be interested in watching that game. So I think that the United States, I think that'll be, aside from the Olympics, that'll be one of the biggest hockey audiences I think we will see for the Four Nations final. I'm not going to make a prediction yet. I will probably make one a little bit later on, before maybe a day before. But right now, I'm seeing at least 10 to 12 million people going to be interested in watching this. And the way that the ESPN is promoting it, I think that's a very good possibility that we'll see a very one of the best audience we will ever see for hockey in the United States.
Oh, absolutely. All right, let me end on this note. There was this something I might have touched it last year. There's a baseball phenom from Japan who left Japan to attend University of Stanford. His name is Rintaro Sasaki. By the way, no relation to Roki Sasaki of the Dodgers, even with the name Sasaki. And despite the fact that they both went to the same high school, which also happens to be the same high school that Shohei Ohtani went to in northern part of Japan. He made his debut with the University of Stanford. He actually graduated last year already. In Japan, you graduate in March for most high schoolers, compared that to here in America. So he basically spent an entire year, almost a year, before the college baseball season happened over the weekend. And, he made his debut with the Stanford Cardinal against the, Fullerton. And, playing for playing first base DH. He's a big hulking guy. And, that's something that kind of limits him because, his size. He's not exactly a nimble guy by any stretch of the imagination. He's a pretty big guy there, as you can see. Maybe a little bit of a, big waist, big girth around his waistline there. But nonetheless, this kid is somebody that you can keep an eye on. I believe there's also another kid, Korean kid from
Yeah,
who is
let's take
pitching
that
for.
video down, Stephen. That's going to give us a copyright strike. Be careful about that. I
All
think
right,
we
I'm
we,
going to take
we
that
better take
down.
that down. Yeah,
All
we
right,
better
I'm
take
going to
that
take
down. I
that
didn't
down.
realize that.
So
Yeah.
that was somebody who posted their not the Major League or like NCAA there, but again,
Right.
something to keep an eye out on. There's another kid from I believe from LSU that was from a Korean background as well that's pitching for them. There are some Asian players who are playing in the college baseball world now, and you're going to see a lot of that more often. I think because I think a lot of people are like a lot of players are probably bypassing, rather than a demanding minor league career.
Mhm.
Uh, you could go straight to college, play ball, get an education, and play in a much better facility, with a better treatment of sorts than long hard life that is being a minor league baseball player. So
Right.
yeah,
You get
so
housing and everything.
exactly. I know there were some groundbreaking rulings about the treatment of minor league baseball players, etc. But I don't think it's going to change overnight, unfortunately. But you're going to see players like Sasaki taking a different route, and getting to the major leagues than most Japanese players usually tend to do, which is obviously play pro ball in NPB and then get posted or become a free agent. But sometimes that takes a lot of time, and Shohei Ohtani being coming over here at the age of 23, 24, those are like a rare exception. So Sasaki still has long ways to go. He has probably another 2 years even after this year to be draft eligible, and we'll see whether he stays here or goes to Japan or whatnot. But there are some interesting players who are making marks finally in America after being here for almost a year, playing, just basically like literally being redshirted for an entire year. So that's going
Mhm.
to do it for our show, the Double A Team podcast, the live stream edition. Thank you to 159 people watching us on our live stream tonight. Obviously with the football season kind of being over, it's a little bit of a slow time right now. Both Ken and I work full time during the weekdays as well. So we'll definitely try and find a schedule between us to find obviously we don't have to force ourselves to talk about things that we don't have a lot of interest or difficulties. So we might do it every other week or something like that moving forward. I see that Sweden just take a
Yeah,
2-1
they just
lead
took a
with
2-1
less
lead.
than a
Yeah.
minute left. So US is kind of backed in a corner right now, so we'll see what happens. But Ken, thank you very much, and I'll give the last last words for you before we go.
Yeah, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is at the youtube.com/Fangs Bites. It's under the Ken Fang Sports channel. Look for that. All our icons are there. So if you missed any part of this video, uh, please make sure you subscribe and you'll be able to catch up in any part of it. We also have a lot of great videos. Steven had a couple of live streams last week in regards to the Bears. So you can definitely see and catch up on if you're a Bears fan, definitely watch those. We'll definitely be talking a lot about the stuff coming up, especially starting next week. The NFL Combine starts next week, and we'll talk about the NFL Draft upcoming as well. So don't forget, we have a lot of great NFL coverage coming up. We also looked at get some guests coming up as well to help us get through some of the shows also. So we'll keep you up to
Yeah, we're
date, people.
definitely going to need a lot of guests to kind of
Yeah,
get through this stuff. It's a little bit of a
yeah.
lull
So
right
keep
now.
keep subscribing to us on X and on Blue Sky. Steven is now changed his name from Asian Sports Fan 1 to Bears Fan Steven. I noticed that. I'm at Fangs Bites, also on X and fangsbites.bsky.social. And you can also find us wherever you find me, on YouTube here, and then the live stream on X. But thanks very much for watching. And Steven, it's going to be interesting to see what happens next week. We'll talk about the NFL scouting combine and preview that next week.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful week, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you and on our next live stream, which we will definitely post on our X B Sky and then on our X live stream channel. Thank you very much. Have a great week. We'll talk to you again soon.